Intel is about to let go about 50,000 employees. How do I know? Well, there's rumor mills cooking, and there's articles out there that are saying, goodbye Intel. New CEO Lip-Bu Tan, I hope I'm saying that right, will lay off half the workforce to save the company from possible bankruptcy. So this is absolutely brutal when you think about that they have 108,000 employees worldwide. They already laid off 15,000 people, and they're gonna go ahead and lay off a lot more people. So now you're like, why is Intel laying off all these people? So let's go into it. And one of the things I always like to do is I like to do some research. I like to do some deep diving into what the issue truly is. And when you look at Intel, I went on Reddit and I said, what's the problem with Intel? And people had like rage comments saying that the problem with the 14th gen Intel chips is that they're highly unreliable. They're prone to failing and even potentially dying. And there's been class action lawsuits against Intel because their chips are dying, they're not holding up to standard. They had to increase their warranty on them because there's been so many failures. So when you think about huge corporations, you think about leadership, you think about huge conglomerates, you think like, hey, they can source the best talent, right? So when you're at Intel, you have almost, not anymore, but you used to have almost an open checkbook to hire whoever you want, and you can do basically whatever you want. And to top it off, once you're that big of a company, you can then lobby, get grants, and do a whole bunch of things in the defense sector, sell to the U.S. government, and do a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And so when you're Intel, because this is what they secured, Intel has been awarded a total of $7.86 billion in direct funding through the U.S. Chip and Science Act, with an additional $3 billion for securing the Enclave program to boost semiconductor manufacturing and advanced packaging products in the U.S. So this is absolutely brutal. The thing that comes in though, that comes to mind and that I just don't get is if you have unreliable chips, if you have unreliable products, why are you gonna throw billions of dollars down the drain? Because if you can't handle having a decent product, then the U.S. government's gonna come in and say, we can't let you fail. Let's just throw a few $billions at it and say, hey, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna classify this rescue package as a bring America's chips manufacturing back and just kind of fund Intel and see like, hey, you know, we got to compete with all these other people. But the problem is that it's not a good product. If you have the best product and you want to scale and you get money, that's great. But guess what I think? This is what I think. If you get money from the government and you get money that is not yours, you spend it unwisely. It's not your hard-earned money that's on the line. It is the U.S. government's. And if you deal with the U.S. government's money, you can spend it on other things than you'd want. And I know they're going to have people that are going to say, they're going to check and balance it, and they want to make sure that it meets this and this requirement. Yeah, but you know what they do? They just funnel it in and and paper massage it, what I call it. And then all of a sudden it looks great on paper, and it's just nonsense, right? And that is where it comes in, where you need to understand your product, your consumers, and you need to know your product. And the bigger the organization gets, the more mistakes you kind of can make, and you can still be okay. So for my small business, and I had to do this the other day, where to restructure, rearrange my people, and I had to take people that were from full-time to part-time, and have to take from people from part-time to give them more hours, right? And so that is hard decisions to do, but you gotta follow the data. And if you make an unreliable product, throwing more money at it isn't gonna help unless that money is exactly being spent on fixing that issue. But then when you look at all these people that say, the 13th generation was also messed up and they just can't do it, then what are we spending that money on? On just salary, keeping people employed? I do not know, because that's exactly what the federal government was trying to do, just keep people employed. And then now we're seeing all these layoffs, right? So if you are working at Intel, you gotta be so close to the core business that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to be involved. I need to do all kinds of stuff so that if there's going to be layoffs, I'm not going to be impacted, right? Because as I said before, and I say it again, you are worth of how close you are to the project and what you can portray to your managers. And that is all not going to save you if they're going to slash the whole department, right? If they're going to do mass layoff, 50%, they might just say, this department's gone, this one we're keeping, and all that kind of stuff. So then my advice does not apply. You just got to be a lucky one, and then it's basically on a coin flip. If your badge going to work, you're still in, and if you're not going to do it, you're out. And it is absolutely detrimental, but the sole purpose of the business is to generate money and to generate a profit. And if you can't do that and you have a faulty product, you need to go back to the basics, right? And then redesign it, re-engineer it, and say, hey, this is what we can do. And the good thing for these huge companies is most of the time it's not a funding problem, it's not a money problem, it's an allocation of resource problem, right? Because if you're Intel, you have a huge checkbook, right? It's not like my company that's gonna say, you know what, I'm helping people get jobs, I do a little YouTube and a little real estate, and now I'm gonna pivot into medical devices and start building this huge robot. I don't have that kind of money. And Intel can do that. They can say, you know what, we're gonna either sell off this department, we're gonna, invest into this, and we're gonna then rearrange some stuff and become a manufacturing hub for it rather than just designing them and then manufacturing. We can't do everything. Let's just specialize in something. Because if I can remember right, that's what NVIDIA does, right? They just design it and then they say, hey, that's how you design it, and they let somebody else make it. So this is a business lesson for a lot of people, but a lot of us are just here day to day. We do small little things, we tweak it, and that's what companies need to do, right? So in my day, I like to go back and say, hey, this wasn't so great that I did today. Maybe I need to do this today to do better. And huge companies, to do small little changes takes a very long time, right? To get a huge, my best comparison is to get a huge cruise ship to turn, it takes a long time, right? But on a jet ski to turn, it's quite quick, right? So a jet ski can turn around and pivot into a different direction way faster than this huge cruise liner that NVIDIA, Telecom, and all these other Intel, AT&T, Verizon, all these bigger businesses are, right? Because for them to pivot and turn, it's going to take a lot of change, a lot of planning, and then while they're turning, there's going to be somebody that says, no, we got to turn the other way. The engineers don't know what's going on, and then it's just going to be a whole big mess, right? So for companies to pivot and do stuff that big is really hard. And there's going to be casualties, and it is going to be ugly. And for people that are just like you and me, that just go to work and try to stay afloat in these hard times, you got to be aware that sometimes it is not your fault. If you're just going to be going to work, doing your thing, and then they say, you know what, we're going to lay off the whole department, as I said before, there's nothing you can do besides preparing and getting ready and thinking about it, right? Because I always say, if you can showcase a company that you can make money for them, or that you're such good engineering skills can save them money, or you're faster, you're better, you got to compete now. Because a year or so ago, 2 years ago, you didn't really have to compete. You were just a warm body, they needed that, and they were okay teaching you. They were saying like, hey, if you can somewhat know CAD or do CNC machines or somewhat, we can teach you everything and you'll be fine. Now they're saying, no. Now what you got to do is you got to come in, and what we're going to do is we're not going to train you. You need to be here and rocking and rolling in no time, because I have other people applying that can do that. And so now it's, you got to have the technical skills, you got to have the sales skills to sell yourself in the interview, and you got to have the networking skills to do it. And to have all three is really hard, because as I know now, there's people person and then there's technical people, right? There's people that have the soft skills to be a manager, to have the communication skills, and then there's the technical people that can do the most amazing things you'd ever believe, right? And I've talked to them because they can secure the interviews, but they can't get past the interview stage because they're so technical and they're so into the nitty-gritty that they can calculate, they can program you, they can do a whole bunch of things. But when it comes to articulating stuff, it isn't gonna be going very well. So you gotta brush up those skills, sell some stuff, and start getting out of your comfort zone, because this job market is brutal. And as there is more and more layoffs, it's going to be more and more competitive. Makes sense, right? So when there's more layoffs, it's going to make it even more competitive for everybody that is trying to get a job. And I had somebody in my group that was like, guys, I sent out 9 resumes and I got 6 rejections. What am I doing wrong? Well, you have to send out more applications, and you really got to work it and leverage connections, leverage a whole bunch of stuff that you can. Message old friends that work at other companies. Hey, I'm looking for a job. Can I do that? Hey, can I support you somewhere? Or hey, I'm looking for this and this. And you got to be reaching out, and you got to be putting yourself out there. You are one of the lucky ones. If you retired a year or so ago and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna lay at the beach or do my condo thing. I go on hikes every day and I'm pretty much over this whole working thing. And you are really lucky, because people like myself and in my generations that are not yet over 35, 36 have not been through a recession yet. And so there's going to be a lot of blood on the street. There's going to be a lot of bankruptcies, leverage people, and people that just were too naive to get help, or too unaware to actually get a job or do something. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, you can't make the payment on the apartment. We're gonna start foreclosing or evicting you from your apartment. If you have a house, we're gonna be starting to get your house and foreclose on it. But this is not even the worst part. The worst part is if you're gonna lose your car and you can't get to work, and you gotta then start taking the bus, walk, ride a bike, or do something. And this is nice because it's Vegas, right? And you can technically do it. But if you're living in a place where it's freezing cold, you lose your car, you do all this, it is brutal. And don't think for 1 second that unemployment's gonna help you. I looked at the car, the average used car loan, it's like $600-700 now if you get a loan. And unemployment, depending on what state it is, it's like $500 a week. So you are gonna take 1 week's worth of paycheck just towards your car. And this is what I'm keep talking about your being over leveraged with your cars. It's not when you're rocking and rolling, you're bringing home $5,000-6,000 and then bonuses and sales commissions and doing all that. No, if you're down in the gutter, everything isn't working as planned, you're not closing people, and all of a sudden your lifestyle comes and bites you, that's an issue, right? And people forget. People just don't think about it. People think they're invincible. People think hey, this isn't going to happen to me. And I know people from Intel are going to see this and they're going to say, this is never going to happen. And then if it does happen, then they're like, ah, shit, I should have updated my LinkedIn. I should have connected with a few people. And I should have contributed. And I should have asked my coworkers, hey, can you endorse me? Hey, can you write me a recommendation on LinkedIn? Hey, can you do all this? Because nowadays, LinkedIn is like if Indeed and Facebook had a child, and that's kind of what came out of it, right? And is it the greatest spot? No, it's not. But it's a great landing page. It's just like a sign that says here, free chicken wings on Tuesdays if you buy a Coke, right? Something like that. Then all of a sudden they look you up and they say, I can do that, because nowadays you're just 1 click away of being found, right? So they'll type in, and most people do that. They want to know who they're interviewing. beyond the resume. So you're just one click away. They bap, 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 and they'll look at you. And instead of you having your LinkedIn photo and what your highlights are, your mugshot comes up from your DUI, drinking and driving, probably wouldn't hire you, right? So if this is you, get your stuff in order. And guess what? Connect with me on LinkedIn anyways. Why not, right? Doesn't cost you anything. So this is it. This is my trusty ride. I got to enjoy every minute out of it because she has to go. She has to be on. She is gonna go, and I am gonna sell her. And it is a huge shame because I said I'll never ever sell her. But there's times where it's great to have a convertible sports car, and then there's times where you need a 4-seater and you need a bigger trunk than what I got, because this sound that this car makes when you start it remotely, you just can't beat it. So yeah, this was it for this video. If you haven't, please like and subscribe, and I'll show you how much you're gonna give me for this car, how I'm gonna do it, how I'm trying to get a good deal. So I kind of document how I'm gonna document my my journey, so you know how I'm gonna do it, because I keep telling people, oh my gosh, this is how you should do it. So, and if you know me, I'm trying to get the best deal with the best customer service for the smallest amount of money with the least amount of work. So I will see you guys in the next one.